Have you ever felt that people don't hate you for who you are, but for where you've arrived, for having dared to dream beyond what they imagined possible for you? You know that moment when you realize that the people who once supported you now look at you with a mixture of discomfort and resentment. It's not because you became a bad person, it's because you went too far for their taste. Franz Kafka knew well this peculiar loneliness, this strange punishment we receive not for our failures, but for our successes. It's as if there exists an invisible line we shouldn't cross, a silent limit that everyone knows, but no one ever told you where it was. And when you cross it, when you go beyond what was expected of you, something changes in people's eyes. Affection transforms into coldness, pride into irritation, support into subtle sabotage. Today, we're going to dive into this uncomfortable truth that Kafka so well understood. We're going to explore why success sometimes hurts more than failure, and how you can navigate this reality without losing your essence. If you've made it this far, I know you're feeling this firsthand. This sensation of being judged not for what you did wrong, but for what you managed to do too right. I want you to know that you're not alone in this journey, and that there exists a path to understand and transform this experience. If this resonates with you, if you recognize this familiar pain of being misunderstood precisely when you should be celebrated, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we create a safe space to explore these profound questions that other places prefer to avoid. Each video is an invitation to reflection, an embrace for those who feel different, misunderstood, or isolated for having dared to go beyond. When you subscribe, you're saying yes to a community that understands your struggles and celebrates your courage. And if this content is touching your heart, leave a like, because this helps carry this message to other people who also need to hear that they're not alone. Now, let's together unravel the mysteries of this paradoxical human condition. Kafka lived his entire life on this strange frontier between being accepted and being rejected, between belonging and being expelled. He knew there exists a collective comfort zone where everyone must remain, a consensual mediocrity that keeps relationships harmonious. When you dare to leave this zone, when you grow beyond what was expected, you break a tacit agreement you didn't even know you had signed. It's as if there were an unwritten rule that says we must all remain at the same level. We must all fail at the same things. We must all have the same limits. And when someone breaks this rule, when they go too far, others feel betrayed, abandoned, diminished. Think about how this happens in your family. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where no one had higher education, where dreams were small and ambitions limited. And then you decided to study, graduate, build a career. At first, everyone was proud, supported you, celebrated your small achievements. But as you kept growing, as your accomplishments became bigger than theirs, something changed. Conversations became tense. Family gatherings turned into minefields of passive-aggressive comments. You did nothing wrong. In fact, you did everything right, but you went too far for their comfort. It's a Kafkaesque situation in the purest sense of the word. You become guilty without having committed any crime. You're judged not for your mistakes, but for your successes. And what's most disturbing is that you start to question yourself, to feel guilty for having success, for having grown, for having dared to dream big, as if it were your responsibility to remain small so that others feel comfortable. As if your brightness diminished others' light, when in reality you were only lighting your own candle. Kafka understood that we live in social labyrinths where rules constantly change, where what is celebrated today may be punished tomorrow. He saw society as an absurd machine that creates contradictory expectations. They teach you to fight for success, but punish you when you achieve it. They tell you to dream high, but reject you when you fly too far. It's like living in a system where you can never really win, because winning is, paradoxically, a form of losing. And you Have you felt this specific loneliness of being misunderstood precisely for your achievements? Have you noticed how people who once encouraged you began to see you with different eyes when you went beyond what they imagined possible? If you're going through this now, if you recognize this familiar pain of being judged not for being bad, but for having gone too far, leave in the comments the phrase, "I went too far for some, but not far enough for myself." Your courage in sharing this experience might be exactly what another person needs to hear today to feel less alone in this journey. This dynamic manifests in subtle and cruel ways. You notice when they stop inviting you to certain gatherings, when your achievements are minimized or ignored, when your struggles are invalidated because you have more than they do. It's as if your growth were interpreted as a silent accusation against their stagnation. Your presence becomes an uncomfortable mirror that reflects everything they could have been, but chose not to be. Kafka wrote about characters who woke up transformed into insects, who were judged for unknown crimes, who navigated through infinite and senseless bureaucracies. But perhaps his greatest insight was realizing that the greatest crime in society is not being bad. It's being too different. It's growing beyond what others consider appropriate for you. It's as if there existed an invisible ceiling for each person, determined not by their capabilities, but by others' expectations and limitations. What makes this situation even more painful is that often these people who reject you were important in your life. They are family members, longtime friends, colleagues you considered close. They don't hate you because you became a bad person. They feel uncomfortable because you grew beyond the image they had of you, beyond the place they had reserved for you in their minds and in their lives. It's as if you were an actor who decided to change roles in the middle of the play, but all the other actors continued following the original script. They expected you to remain in the character they knew, to keep the same limitations, the same fears, the same smallness. When you evolve, when you transform, when you go beyond, you break the entire play, force everyone to rethink their own roles, and this generates profound discomfort. Kafka knew this is an existential condition inherent to human growth. Growing is inevitably leaving some people behind, not out of malice, not out of arrogance, but because growth requires movement, and not everyone is willing to move at the same pace or in the same direction. It's like a dance where some partners stay still while others continue dancing. There are no villains in this story, only people at different moments in their journeys. The question is not whether you should stop growing to please others, because that would be a betrayal against your own nature, against your dreams and potential. The question is how to navigate this reality without becoming bitter, without internalizing rejection as a truth about your worth. How to continue being yourself even when this bothers others. How to maintain your authenticity even when it's misunderstood. Kafka teaches us that life is fundamentally absurd, that we're all navigating rules we didn't make and don't fully understand. But within this absurdity, there exists a strange beauty in the courage to continue being who you are, to continue growing despite resistance, to continue dreaming despite rejection. There's something profoundly human in the refusal to diminish yourself to fit into others' comfort. The paradox is that the more you grow, the lonelier you might feel, but also the more authentic you become. It's like climbing a mountain. The higher you go, the less company you have, but the better the view. And perhaps this is the fundamental choice we all need to make, between the comfortable company of mediocrity and the challenging solitude of excellence. This doesn't mean you need to isolate yourself or become arrogant. It means you need to find your people, those who celebrate your growth instead of feeling threatened by it. It means you need to learn to validate your achievements internally, without depending on external approval. It means you need to make peace with the reality that not everyone will understand your journey, and this is not a reflection of your worth. Kafka also teaches us about the importance of compassion, even for those who reject us. They're not necessarily bad people, they're just people with fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of facing their own limitations, fear of questioning the choices they made. Their rejection of your growth is more about them than about you. It's about their own ghosts, their own insecurities, their own frustrations. There's a profound liberation in understanding this. You don't need to carry the weight of others' approval. You don't need to feel guilty for having dared to dream big, for having worked hard, for having achieved things others consider impossible. Your responsibility is to your own journey, to your own authenticity, to your own growth. But this liberation doesn't come without cost. There's a real mourning in realizing that some important people in your life may not be prepared to accompany you in your evolution. There's a profound sadness in discovering that success can be as isolating as failure, sometimes even more so. It's like discovering that the victory you dreamed so much of has a bittersweet taste, sweet for the achievements, bitter for the loneliness it can bring. Kafka lived this loneliness intensely. He was a man ahead of his time, with a sensitivity that bothered others, with a perception of reality that was both brilliant and disturbing. He knew his gift was also his curse, that his ability to see beyond was also his source of isolation. But he continued writing, continued creating, continued being faithful to his vision, even when this put him in conflict with the world around him. This is the deepest lesson we can extract from Kafka's work and life. Courage is not in being accepted by everyone. It's in continuing to be yourself, even when few understand. True strength is not in pleasing the masses. It's in honoring your own truth, even when this bothers others. Real success is not measured by external approval, but by fidelity to your own values and dreams. And perhaps most importantly, understand that going too far is actually going exactly where you should be. There's no limit to human growth, no ceiling for dreams, no line you shouldn't cross when it comes to becoming the best version of yourself. The limitations others try to impose on you are reflections of the limitations they impose on themselves. When you understand this deeply, when you internalize this truth, something magical happens. You stop apologizing for being who you are. Stop diminishing yourself to fit into others' comfort. Stop feeling guilty for having gone beyond what was expected of you. You embrace your unique journey, celebrate your achievements without asking permission, and find peace in the solitude that sometimes accompanies excellence. Kafka left us a legacy of courage disguised as literature. Every page he wrote was an act of rebellion against mediocrity, against limiting expectations, against social pressure to remain small. He taught us that it's better to be misunderstood for being authentic than to be accepted for being false. That it's better to be alone at the top of your own mountain than accompanied in the valley of conformity. So, when you feel they hate you not for being bad, but for having gone too far, remember that you're in good company. Kafka was there. All the great dreamers were there. All those who dared to be more than was expected of them went through this experience. It's almost a rite of passage for those who choose excellence over mediocrity, for those who choose growth over conformity. Life is too short to be lived within the limits others establish for us. It's too precious to be wasted trying to fit into boxes that weren't made to contain our greatness. You weren't born to be small. You weren't created to remain in the same place. You didn't come to this world to satisfy the limited expectations of people who are afraid of their own potential. Your journey is unique. Your dreams are valid. Your achievements deserve to be celebrated, even if not everyone is prepared to celebrate alongside you.